All set, Dr. John.
Okay, wonderful. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Thank you so much, everybody. Such a pleasure to join you. This is Mastering Public Speaking with Boston Islamic Seminary, and I'm so glad to have everyone on board. My name is John Robbins. I'll be facilitating and leading the workshops, but really I mean for this to be a participatory thing. I hope everybody's able to participate, get a lot out of it. And then all of you watching at home, if you're able to, you can join as well. Big believer in Boston Islamic Seminary. I view teaching as a zakat on our knowledge, and obviously we as Muslims I do feel it's incumbent upon each of us to gain knowledge as much as we can, and to never cease in those initiatives and efforts to increase our knowledge across a variety of fields. So within this course, it's really going to be structured around how can we better improve the ways in which we communicate. And that can take a whole host and variety of forms, whether it's verbal communication, things like direct presentations, things like direct khutbahs or halaqas, leading sessions of courses, or even leading sessions in the workplace. Those are all great options. At the same time, we're going to focus on things like nonverbal communication. We're going to focus on things like maintaining eye contact, tone of voice and tenor, cadence, engaging one's audience, storytelling for impact, making sure that you're packaging information in a digestible, interesting way that really grabs the attention of those around you. And we're going to be doing that for both, with recognition that a lot of these interactions happen both offline in the real world, but also increasingly online in front of Zoom. So a lot of the course is going to be tailored around how can we successfully deliver presentations and communicate on a screen. I know that's a little bit challenging in some ways, but inshallah, we're going to make it work. And a broader context of the course is that it's going to be within a broader Islamic framework. By that, I mean that obviously the lessons are applicable in any setting, but a lot of the ways and the lessons that we're going to get there are going to incorporate or revolve around Quran, Sunnah, of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're going to be within the context of the recognition that many people in these courses do tend to go on and either become chaplains, work in university settings, work with MSAs, in some cases work within prison settings, deliver khutbahs or halaqas within masajid settings. These are all critical. For me, every good course starts with a why. Why are we doing this? I'll be interested to hear from each of you your why in a moment, but I do want to share that for me, I view this course as, again, as a cat on my knowledge, that it's really incumbent upon each of us not just to learn and incorporate a lot of what we're getting into our daily lives, but also teach and share it out more broadly. It's a true gift to be able to do this within the context of Boston Islamic Seminary. I'm a huge believer in Muslim institutions and building those up for the next generation. It's why I personally work with BIS. But at the same time, I also believe that we as a community have the best message, we have the best material, we have the best stories, but there's a huge gap between how we've received that and how we deliver it and how we share it outward. And if we can close that gap even a little bit, if we can do a better job in our khutbahs, if we can do a better job in our halaqas, if we can do a better job explaining our deen and explaining our positions, if we can do a better job in the media, in the news, and within our local communities being ambassadors, that we will completely and fundamentally rewrite the position of Islam in America. That's part of my vision. I think it's such an incredible opportunity here. We've all seen the power of that kind of communication. We've seen that the best message and the best words, when delivered poorly or in a boring manner or by someone who seems uninterested, falls flat. There's nothing there. You can't possibly hope to inspire. And at the same time, a very simple message delivered in a way that's inspiring or uplifting or with a captivating story can change the world and change lives. So that's the power, I think, of communications, to be able to bring out the best in what is already the best and make us the best communicators of that. So that's just a really quick snapshot of, or especially for those at home who are just tuning in, for Mastering Public Speaking. I'd like to take a moment here, just as we're first starting out, get to know each one of you a little bit. I'd love to hear your why, of why you're interested in taking the course, a little bit of your background. I promise this won't be graded. This is a very low stakes public speaking exercise, just to hear from each one of you a little bit about yourself, what your relationship is with BIS, and what you're maybe hoping to get out of the course. So I'm happy if someone would like to volunteer, or we can just start going around, whatever you all would prefer.
I can go, Dr. Robbins.
Sure, thanks, Takada.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. So I am a Merle student. I am kind of a little more than halfway complete with the master's degree program. And I kind of missed out because I wasn't able to take your course I believe it was last semester that you offered it as part of our course content. But I did review the syllabus a little bit, and I knew that since my interests align with going into chaplaincy work, especially in the hospital space, and communication is a very central component to being a chaplain, there will be opportunities where I will have to speak in larger forums than just the one-on-one kind of counseling session with patients. I knew that perfecting and kind of polishing my delivery when I speak publicly is something that's going to be an asset for me to kind of work on and get better at. I do feel as though, like I say, a lot, and and there are aspects of public speaking that I can hear myself say that I know could be made better, and I'm trying to figure out techniques of how to do that. And also, like you said a little earlier, connecting to people. A part of that is effective delivery and effective communication. So I think being Muslim leaders in whatever capacity we are in our different disciplines, we need to really master this skill because it just makes us more effective in those different roles that we play.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. No, thank you so much, Doctor. Really a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Sure, Akmal, please go ahead.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. John, I wanted to, I'm a physician. I'm actually, so I'm in the hospital right now working. So I work in, various capacities. I'm a professor, also assistant professor. So I do, teach students, fellows, and so I have some experience with this. But always, I want to learn from you what you have to say. But this has never had any formal public speaking, course like this. I just want to know, how we can improve our communication, especially in the setting of our dean, working, I'm actually a Merle student too. I just joined this semester. So this part of, I think, our requirement is to have a course like this.
I think it cut out maybe just a second here at the end. Yeah, your battery may have died on the iPods. I could hear you before, but not now.
See if this will work.
Here we go.
Can you hear now?
Perfect. Yep.
Okay. So were you able to hear anything, or?
Yes, right up until the end, right up until your mural.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, there we went. Okay, he'll be back in a moment, I'm sure. And Tahira, where are you located geographically?
I live in Westchester, New York.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
How about yourself?
Sunny Los Angeles.
Oh, I'm jealous.
I know, yeah, it's 80 degrees here today, nice fall day. I spent 7 years in Boston, so I earned my dues. Okay, well, while we're waiting, Maya, Rahma, would either one of you like to go?
All right, I can go.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Sure,
you can go first, Rahma.
It's okay, you can go. I'm driving, so my service is kind of bad. I'll be cutting in and out. You can go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, it's my first class at Boston Islamic Seminary. I've been on the mail list for some time, and yeah, so I've been postponing it, and I think it's quite interesting to learn more about communicating in general, like public speaking, and also communicating what we know about Islam. Both are interesting, and I feel like I'm better in one-to-one conversations, but I'm not comfortable with public speaking yet, and I think this is an interesting skill to develop, and that's why I'm interested in this class.
Sure. Okay, that's wonderful. And what are you working professionally? Are you in Mural full time? What's your status?
I'm in the process of finishing grad school. Doing PhD in economics at Tufts University. I'm in Boston now.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Dr. Akmal, we have you back. That's good. You are muted though. You are muted. I think you'll need to unmute a little bit. Here, you're
okay.
muted.
Yes.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. So I, what happened. So because I'm doing it from my phone, so that's maybe so got a little. So I was just talking about why first of all I'm a rural a student. So my first semester. So I think I saw that public speaking is part of that requirement. So I joined for one reason. Second reason is I think it's always good to learn professionally. Because never had any formal training in public speaking. Like you learn from the experts and some techniques and how to get our message across more effectively in a more succinct manner. And maybe you're interested in in halakas and giving khutbas and in the future. And so hopefully this will help out and learn some more. I do have some experience, as I said, that I do teach, and but this will be a little bit different setting, and more like in public, layman, sort of different, audience. So that's I want to learn from you and see. So what are the tricks of the trade, and is there anything new that we can help and improve our communication?
Sure, absolutely. No, wonderful. Great to have you on board. And Mai's in Boston. Are you also in the Boston area?
I'm actually I work in Burlington, which is the Leahy Hospital Medical Center, which is in Burlington. So main campus is in Burlington. So and I live very close here, so just suburb of Boston.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Great to have you on board.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah. Are you in Boston, John? Are you? I know you moved to
LA, yeah, Los Angeles now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was just saying to Tahir, it's 80 degrees here, beautiful fall day.
Oh, okay. All right. Good to talk. Good to see you again. Yeah.
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah. And it's glad to have you on board. You just joined. I think we're going around and basically introducing ourselves. Rahma, I think you were up next, though.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rahma. Sorry, I'm in the car, so my service is not too great. But professionally, I'm a software engineer. I work for a hospital in New York City. I'm actually not signed up for the class because of a scheduling issue. I might potentially sign up, figure that out this week, inshallah. But the reason why I'm interested in this class, or why I joined this first session at least, is because sort of like what you were talking about before, in terms of, like having that Islamic knowledge or trying to portray, whether it's a story or some sort of information, but having it in a way that's doesn't necessarily capture the audience's attention and interest. Because I'm involved with Mass New York, so I do a lot of like halaqat in our local masjid. So just kind of like, figuring out like what are the best ways to say information in a way that's concise, but also again captures the audience's attention, and gives due justice to the information that they're trying to portray.
Wonderful, perfect. Thank you so much. And so you're in New York City area, even though you're driving?
Yes, I'm in New York City.
Sounds good. Wonderful. Thanks for joining. And are you able to hear us and be heard?
Yes, I think I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Well, we'd love to hear a little bit more about you, your background, and why you're interested in the course, what you're hoping to get out of it.
Yeah, I think it's for public speaking, or, my name is Enis. I am originally from Turkey. I'm from North Carolina. I am the businessman, and what else? I do the business. Just I want to know how to speak in front of the people.
Okay, sure, wonderful. And any particular reason you're interested in the course beyond just speaking in front of people?
I mean, I am shy. I cannot talk in front of the people. So that's the thing that I want to do very long time.
Okay, wonderful. Well, you're sounding confident now, so I think we'll be able to do some good work here. Really
Yes.
happy everybody on board. And you say you're in North Carolina, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So everybody's East Coast, except for myself, so that's fine. That makes things a little bit easier. I recognize it's evening time for all of you. So a couple of basic housekeeping things are, it's a 2-hour course, so I do try to do a break halfway through, take 5-10 minutes, just get everybody up, stretch your legs, that kind of thing. But I'm also mindful about when Maghrib timing is, and that will change during the semester as daylight savings time hits. And so given that some people are really pretty far north in Boston, some people are pretty far south in South Carolina, it's going to be different timing. So I will need your help keeping track of when you will need, when your windows are for Salah, just to make sure that we give everybody ample time. So ideally we set a break time that everybody can pray during that time. But if for some reason it doesn't work or you need to, then obviously the prayer takes precedent, and please feel free to step out for a few moments. That's obviously fine. We'll go over the syllabus in a moment here and just kind of walk through the course, expectations, kind of how we're going to be structuring things. Moving forward, we didn't say anything this day, of course, but moving forward, I do ask the cameras be on in general, just so we can really get a gauge of how everybody's doing. We can monitor body language, make sure that everybody's engaged in that way. A critical component of public speaking is always that you have that physical presence. Very rarely is it pure audio. So the more that we're able to do that, get used to that, get used to kind of that self-presentation, the better we're all going to be. I did forget to introduce myself, didn't I? Okay, so I'll take a step back around that. So I'm John Robbins. I came from the Boston area, was there for about 7 years. Previously had done a PhD in English, taught for a few years. I did a postdoc at Tufts and at Penn. And so I spent a lot of time in the classroom in front of students, doing quite a bit of writing, a lot of teaching, a lot of presentations and lectures, writing, everything from book proposals to articles and papers, and doing everything from, 1 hour, 2 hour lectures to, quick lectures in front of a small group, that kind of thing. And I did a lot of graduate teaching certificates and public speaking certification programs while I was in graduate school as well, which I led at Cornell, where I was doing my PhD for a little while. Before that, I was a high school math teacher. Afterward, I came to Boston, founded the Massachusetts chapter of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, where we're the largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization in the country. Led that for about 7 years, represented the Muslims in the Muslim community in Massachusetts. And then since then, about 2 years ago, I took a different role at Penny Appeal USA, which is an international relief and development organization focusing on the Muslim world. And so been there for about 2 years as CEO. A lot of my role is external facing now. Like I say, I do this primarily because I believe in BIS. I believe in making sure that we support the next generation of leadership and that we support our institutions within the community. So I'm really happy to be doing this semester as well. And always happy to answer other questions too. A key component of this course is obviously my availability. I always want to make sure that I'm available for everyone. So if there are questions, if you need a meeting, if you have specific concerns, anything like that, I really do have an open door policy. Email me, we'll set up a time for a Zoom. I'll make sure that I'm available for everyone, bearing in mind that I am on PST most of the time. So I'll kind of be going through that. Okay, any quick questions before we start doing a quick walkthrough of the syllabus? Just because, again, I do make sure that I try to telegraph pretty comprehensively what's going to happen in there. And it serves as a really useful walkthrough week by week of the expectations for the course, the coursework, all the assignments, everything like that. Just I believe in absolute 100% clarity for everyone as much as it's possible. Anything like that before we get started on that segment? Okay, great. Give me 1 second, I'll pull that right up. And I'll also
I think you may need to send it in the chat again because, for example, Eunice joined later after you put it in the chat. I think people who joined after you sent it in the chat may not have access to the syllabus.
Is that how it works? Okay, great. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, just as a caveat is I am not the most technologically literate person in general, so please do bear with me. If ever my camera's not working, or I don't have good audio, or there's an issue with the screen or sound or anything like that, please just let me know. I'm not offended. I'm a little low tech, so just in general, please do bear with me and be patient. I really appreciate it. Okay, can everyone see my screen of the course syllabus?
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Thanks so much.
Yes,
okay.
we can.
All right, wonderful. Okay, and this is all again shared in the chat. I know I shared it here because I know not everyone is on Moodle, and also this is for the people who are able to watch on Facebook as well. Okay, great. Let's see. Okay, so this is just basic info, including the course description, which we've run through. BIS does ask that we foreground the objectives, both simultaneously informational, spiritual, and practical, which are, and again, they do ask that we spend a little bit of time on this. We are trying to be foundational in our knowledge sharing about public speaking and communication, instilling self-confidence, spiritually challenging students to distill complex topics into manageable didactic modes that are accessible, especially in the spiritual and religious knowledge realm. And then practically exposing you to strategies that are going to benefit you in public speaking and communication now and in the future. These dovetail with the learning outcomes of the course, which again, I'll just very quickly run through these. So you're developing and demonstrating verbal, nonverbal, and research competencies, increasing ability to analyze presentations by others, understanding communication concepts more broadly that are foundational for effective speaking, and applying them. Learning how to ask good questions within the course, that's something we're going to be focusing on as well. Increasing your ability to connect with audiences in religious settings in particular. Improving your ability to engage and inspire within these settings. Listen analytically and improve your ability thereof. And reducing fear or anxiety commonly associated with public speaking and presentations. In terms of ethics, of course, please make sure that you're completing all required readings, activities, and any kind of assignments carefully. If you're unable to do so for some reason, please let me know. And obviously, plagiarism is something that's not tolerated at BIS more broadly. If you have concerns about what constitutes that, if you're ever unclear about whether something might fall into those grounds, please email me proactively, reach out. We can work out a solution to figure out ways of completing an assignment that doesn't, take you too closely or possibly cross any ethical guidelines, any ethical lines there. I do expect you, because it is such a praxis-focused class, by which I mean that it's not just theoretical, it's not just research-driven, it's very much a hands-on, practical, workshop-driven course. And that means that I expect everybody to attend insofar as it's possible each class session to do prep work in advance. And the lectures are going to help solidify the content there and fill in gaps. Each person will be speaking during each class, insofar as that's possible. Ideally, we'll be delivering some form of lecture presentation on the majority of classes, not quite all have that lecture or presentation component, but the overwhelming majority. But even those classes when you're not, or even during those times when you yourself are not actually delivering a lecture or presentation, I do ask that you participate actively, asking questions, making observations, providing feedback, providing comments upon other students' presentations or thoughts or ideas, building off of the ideas that we've already said before, connecting them with past concepts or concepts from your own life or experience. These are really critical components to make sure that we enrich the full spectrum of the course. Assessments are fairly evenly broken down. Attendance and participation constitute about 15%. The 5 oral presentations are equally divided for 13 each, along with 2 written assignments. What we call a TED Talk analysis at the beginning, which is I think week 3, which is 2 pages, and then a brief final self-reflection paper, which is 3 to 5. I do believe in not, in one of the ways in which I attempt to de-stress the environment a little bit is by not making any one assignment so heavily weighted that it's really challenging. So you do have flexibility. So if one thing doesn't go particularly well, it's not going to overall have a massive impact on your course grade, for example. So I hope that part of this is to de-stress what can be a very challenging process for a lot of people, and to make sure that you always have opportunities, but also to make sure that you're engaging throughout. You're not going to find me 50% assignments here. And you'll notice the overwhelming percentage of the grading is around the oral presentations. That's by design, and that's part of the philosophy of the course, that we really are oriented around making sure that the big component is that workshop, praxis, student engagement component. Attendance and participation, we went over that a little bit, but more than 2 absences will reduce your grade in the course for those who are taking it for credit, unless there are extenuating circumstances. So obviously, if there is something extenuating, please email me as soon as it becomes apparent. If you need to miss a course for some reason, please send me an email and let me know. Much better to do that rather than have us wondering during the class if you're going to be there or not, or have something predicated on group discussion when somebody may not be able to attend. I do provide a holistic rubric for that evaluation of in-class presentations. 70% is the extent to which you are summarizing and delivering the material. So this is the extent to which you are really fundamentally presenting about it. 15% is critical analysis. So that's analysis or critique or questions raised and solutions proposed if relevant. So this is basically the response or the feedback based on that kind of live conversation in class, which happens inevitably after a presentation. You speak about, Mesopotamia, for example, and someone asks, well, what about, this empire movement, or what about, weather or something like that during the period and changing climate conditions? Okay, great. We're going to have a live presentation or a live discussion component about that. It's that ability to more nimbly pivot. Timing is 10% of it, which means really no halting language. It means that you're keeping pace. It means things like rhythm and flow of the presentation. You're not spending 90% of the conversation talking about irrelevant details and only 10% on the thrust of what you're talking about. These are things that we're going to spend significant class time going over so that you're well prepared. And then 5% is visual aesthetics. And that ranges from everything to, the PowerPoint presentation that we give. Obviously that will be lopsided there. But even in terms of how you're presenting, your specific body language, the way in which you're carrying yourself, all those things. That's a relatively low weight because, again, I recognize that can be a stress point for some people. So while it does factor in, it's not going to be the determining factor on how you do or how you're evaluated. The grading scale is given by BIS. This is copy and pasted there. We have 3 required reading documents. The first is a book called Talk Like TED, which is basically, if everybody's familiar with TED Talks, it's basically an in-depth, exhaustive guide to basically best practices around that. The second is the book How to Tell a Story. This is by The Moth. The Moth Radio Hour is a series of stories that people tell. They basically get up on a stage, either prompted or unprompted, either with preparation and training or not, usually in front of large groups, usually a few thousand people, and basically tell a story. It can be anywhere from 7 to about 13 minutes typically, although some are shorter, but rarely are they longer. And so we'll be having select stories there that are very interesting for some reason, one reason or another. And How to Tell a Story is basically the distilled knowledge of what goes into making a really great story, which is at core one of the great things that we're going to be focusing on here. I do think it's, and of those, by the way, how the select stories from the Moth Radio Hour will be downloadable. Talk Like TED and How to Tell a Story are both available either as physical books or on Kindle on Amazon, so you can get those within a few seconds if needed. I do think it's important that we focus on ADA a little bit, academic accommodations for students with abilities, American Disabilities Act guidance. So I do try to be very, very inclusive of that. Obviously, ADA full definition encompasses a range of physical, emotional, psychological, mental, anything along those lines. So I really do take a broad definition of what constitutes disability, and don't believe it's on me or BIS to make that judgment or uphold that criteria any more than is absolutely necessary. I do ask that if you have any specific pre-existing conditions or situations that will in any way impact your participation in the course, whether it's time to complete assignments, whether it's ability to present in class, whether it's reading speed or anything along those lines, please do bring that up beforehand within the first 2 weeks of class if possible and as soon as you can. Of course, if anything develops over the course of the semester, then obviously please bring it up as soon as you're able. But otherwise, we will do our best to maximally accommodate any student who makes a meaningful request. And I do take that very, very seriously as well. Any questions before we move on to the weekly schedule and course assignment descriptions? Okay, great. Sure, walaikum assalam.
I don't know if you can hear me well, but in terms of like the presentations and things like that, are they like pre-assigned topics, or do we have like some flexibility on what those topics are?
Yeah, so I'll be going over that within the written assignment guidelines. You'll have basically free latitude over what assignments you would like or what topics you would like to pick. So for example, I had students last semester or last year who did, they did presentations on composting. Some people did on, figures from early Islam. Some people did figures about, contemporary questions around, contemporary texts or something like that. Or some people told stories about their childhood. Some people told stories about their grandparents. Some people told stories about something that they had seen in a movie one time. It was a huge range last time we taught the course. And so I really do try to open that up and have it be very widely flexible, obviously within guidelines of appropriateness. Okay, perfect. All right, so today, September 27th, we're introduction syllabus review. The homework for tonight will be reading, or the homework for this week will be reading Talk Like TED, which is a pretty quick book. I think it's maybe 250 pages, something like that, but it's a very, very quick read. It's not very dense. It's something that you can, read in 2 or 3 sittings. And it's very, very rich in terms of the knowledge that it shares. And we'll be talking through it next week. And that, primarily will be a discussion of what constitutes a good TED Talk, which is basically this kind of idea of an informative speech, which we'll spend the next 2 weeks on. So for that October 4th session, we'll have the homework of the TED Talk analysis, which will be basically, finding a TED Talk that you like, watching it, and breaking down what makes it effective or ineffective. What are the pros and cons? Is it too long, too short? Is the speaker's cadence too fast or too slow? Are they telling enough stories? How are they connecting with you emotionally? Are they using body language effectively? Are they owning the stage? How's the audio presentation? Do they have any verbal or nonverbal tics that you're becoming aware of? How are they guiding messaging toward you? Do they have a specific ask or takeaway that they're driving or thrusting toward? How's their opening and closing? How's their memorable aspects? Are they using statistics effectively or visual imagery? Are they evoking all 5 senses? These are the kind of criteria that we're going to be working on those first couple of weeks because they really lay the foundation for the course. Fundamentally, everything is going to build off of that idea of the informative speech, a speech to inform or impart knowledge. And so on that week 3 session, that October 11th, your homework will be to prepare that first oral presentation and then deliver it the following week. The general structure of the course will be this: give an oral presentation and then start discussion on the next type of speech. So from informative, we'll go toward persuasive, moving away from just telling you about something generally, just telling you about composting, for example, moving on to persuading you to start composting, persuading you to start recycling, whatever it might be. This is a very different subject, but I think one that's absolutely critical in a whole host of settings, but it has a different set of rules, guidelines, structures that you want to follow as well. And there's a very, some very ancient techniques and strategies that we'll be focusing on, combined with some modern innovations in the field too. As we keep going on there, we'll be that week of October 25th, delivering our persuasive speeches and attempting to persuade, and then starting to discuss what we call externally aided speeches in the industry. And these are things that are, again, not surprisingly, aided by external things. In the past, this might have been a slideshow presentation on a board. It might have been something that you had a prop or something like that. Now, functionally, that means PowerPoint in front of a Zoom screen, for better or worse, is the medium in which 95% of the time we're going to be engaging audiences these days within the world of Zoom. So it's where we're going to be focusing there. We're going to be focusing on how to use the medium really effectively. What are some strategies for using it to your advantage and not letting it overwhelm you? We're going to be talking about how horrible PowerPoint can be a lot of the time and how to overcome that and really do a better job around it and actually make it interesting and subsume it to what you want it to be rather than let it overwhelm and take over the presentation, as it so often unfortunately does. At that point, we're going to start reading, focusing on the storytelling component. So we're going to read the How to Tell a Story, listen to the Moth podcasts, and then start going there to tell your storytelling speech. This is, generally the most kind of like authentic part of the course, where you really are sharing some component of yourself. You're telling a personal story, something that either happened to you or relates to you. So this is where, I hope that by this point we'll have had a little bit more of an opportunity to feel, create some psychological safety in the course and to go from there. I do have 2 weeks in which I'll either be off or traveling. The week of November 15th, I'll be in Dubai for a work conference. The following week is Thanksgiving, so I'll be traveling for that as well to the East Coast. So those 2 weeks I won't be able to join, but we make up the time in the later weeks where we do storytelling speech and then combine that with discussion of strategies for speaking with the media. This is something that as you work within mosque settings or in religious leadership settings is really critical to have some kind of background in. And an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure here. We need more Muslims who are familiar and conversant with how to successfully pitch stories, speak with reporters, communicate effectively within op-eds or letter to the editors, all these different elements. It's a critical skill in our community and one that we're sadly pretty far behind on. So I do believe in sharing that as much as we can. After this point, we move on to the final section, which is the hardest part of the course for many people, which is the extempore or impromptu speech. This is where we will talk through and spend a good bit of time really having some good deep background into how to do this, the specific strategies for this, because there are ways, ironically, to prepare. Most people feel that this is coming into a setting where you're asked to give a speech, you're caught flat-footed, but actually if you have some specific structures, frameworks, strategies in place, then you can go into almost any setting and with 2 minutes notice, give a very quick and solid presentation. And we'll be focusing on that. And so in that December 13th final class, I will be giving you in real time topics, giving you 2 or 3 minutes to prepare, and then asking you to speak in front of the course. Again, all this is oriented toward making sure that you have that psychological safety. I recognize that public speaking can be stressful or anxiety inducing for a great number of people, and that's very fair and legitimate. The old adage is that if you poll people about their greatest fear, more people say public speaking than death. And so more people would rather be in the casket than in front of it, giving a speech about the person who passed away. This is, very well-honed statistic and very true. And so a lot of the course is about developing that comfort, developing that confidence, and only putting you in a more challenging situation once you have all the things in place that you need in order to succeed, and positioning you to do really well in that setting so you can go confidently in the real world as well. And during that final class, we'll wrap up, reflections, anything like that. And then we'll have a final written assignment that's due about a week later, which is again 3 to 5 pages. I've basically gone through all the assignments in some detail, but in the syllabus, I do also spell out specifically what we're looking for in each assignment, length, duration, type of all this that we're looking for, all these different elements here where you can find links, everything along those lines. And so again, I hope that's pretty clear. And then finally, just a quick note about oral presentation evaluation metrics, that all evaluations are based on a 5-point scale, with 5 being the highest. So you have nonverbal elements, structure, content, creativity, and engagingness. And so really that factors into that 70% of, when you talk about the content of the presentation, this is really what goes in there. So you're looking for, really hitting those 5 points about the nonverbal, that it has a strong structure, that the content is where it needs to be in terms of being meaningful and sensible, that it's creative, and that the subject itself is engaging and not something dull, or that it's made engaging. Because as we talked about at the beginning, a really good public presentation can make virtually any topic fascinating. A great public speaker can engage you about anything, whereas a poor public speaker can make even the most interesting topics seem dull. So that's the end of the syllabus review. Is there anything that that people have questions around related to the syllabus at this point before we keep moving?
I just have a quick question, Dr. Robbins. So the master's course that was offered that you taught, was it similar content? How was it different from this course?
Very similar content. I was asked to, basically do a pretty similar class here. This class will be a little more pared down in terms of that was 3 hours per week. This is only 2. That had, that did not have an elective component for students generally. I think I had 1 elector, but in general, it was not offered. This course for students who are not taking it as graded, which I understand might be the majority here. If you're not taking it as graded, then the readings obviously are not as required. The written assignments are not as required. I still strongly encourage you to do them. But obviously, there's no attendance requirements, things like that. You're welcome to come and go as you please. That said, I do still ask that even if you're auditing the course, that you engage as fully as possible, that you do the readings to the greatest extent that you're able to, that you participate to the greatest extent that you're able to, that you join the classes, speak during them, prepare the presentations, all those different elements. I understand that for that reason, because the reading is a little bit lighter as well, and less elements of it are required, that it's 2 credit hours versus 3. So I do think that makes a difference there, but I'm not highly fluent in the credit hour system at BIS, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, sure. Is there anything that I went over that you feel something is missing from? So for example, is there anything that you in particular want to see from the course that as we're early on here that you say, hey, can we add this component in or modify the syllabus to include this or something like that? I'm certainly very open to making sure that we're checking off all the boxes for people that, you really want to see something in.
Well, yeah, I have a suggestion. So if the focus of this is for speeches that are kind of catered toward religious content, will we be talking about like select dua to choose, let's say, to open a discussion or to end a discussion, how to handpick those ad'iyah, like that sort of thing?
Yes, and I think I didn't mention this as much as I should have in the presentation or in the syllabus there, but let's see, it is week, I think the 2nd or 3rd to last. Yeah, so December 6th discussion is strategies for khutbahs and religious presentations in particular. So we do try to interweave that generally throughout the course. How do we use the kind of stories from the Quran very effectively? How do you talk about them in a meaningful way and weave those into the focus of the conversation? If you're giving a halaqah, what are the different settings and what are the different criteria there? As we talk about audience, what is the audience that we're looking at? One of the hardest things about speaking in an Islamic setting is the audience, in my experience. In that generally your audiences tend to be fairly homogenous, and that lets you give a pretty targeted presentation. If you walk into a mosque, as we all know, you've got people who are 5 years old and 95 years old. You've got people who, were born and raised in the state in which you find themselves now, and who have been there for 3 hours. You have people from all kinds of different ranges of religiosity and practice and what that means. People who define their Islam differently, Sunnis, Shias, everything in between. People who, have very, very conservative leanings and very liberal leanings. People whose language and fluency is at all different places. People have different dialects and expectations about gender relations. All these different elements are usually in the mix. Makes it very complicated, but it's also a joy and a challenge. So we're going to be focusing a good bit of time around that too. And, so we do have a little bit of select designated time there, but in general, we're going to be interweaving those components in throughout the course. Yeah, great question. Thank you so much.
So John, I have a question. I think given my schedule, and I think it's pretty intensive, what I've seen in terms of the courses is very involved in, and which is actually the way it should be. I mean, this is a great, very great outline of the course. And I was just wondering if, because of my schedule and sometimes my kind of travels also, I may not be able to fulfill all the requirements that are meaning. Is there a possibility? Like I think they gave us the option of audit versus credit. So in that case, meaning, do you think it would be useful to, if you can't do like 100% of the course, you get 80% of it, then it would still be something that's acceptable?
For an auditor, you mean?
I'm sorry?
So you're only able to do 80% if it's acceptable for an auditor?
Yeah, I mean, I think if suppose if I, because my other sort of responsibilities and may not be able to, be as active in terms of participation as possible. So I was wondering, it would be something good for me to, continue with this or drop off.
No, sure. I think obviously, I obviously want everybody to join who feels that they can benefit. I have the luxury of not being part of administration, so you would certainly want to bring that up with Sheikh Sohail or someone else who could kind of point you in the right direction and make sure that that's appropriate for your personal academic schedule and everything like that. I certainly again welcome auditors who are in the program. Love making sure that we're engaging with people and maximizing engagement with the course writ large. I don't have any issue with that, especially for students who are not taking it for a grade.
Okay.
Online, as long as it fits within the wider kind of BIS framework and everything.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Mai, Anas, Rahma, any questions from your all set?
I have a question, just quick